The roar of jet engines hummed beneath the lavish cabin of a first-class flight bound for Paris. The atmosphere in the section was serene, with its plush leather seats and the gentle clinking of glasses filled with champagne. Passengers nestled in their cocoons of luxury, some leafing through magazines while others chatted softly. Among them sat Lionel Messi, the world-renowned footballer whose presence, though subdued, radiated a quiet charisma. Dressed casually in a plain white t-shirt and jeans, Messi appeared no different from any other traveler, except for those who recognized the subtle gleam of his stature. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Sitting a row behind Messi was Robert, a wealthy businessman whose confidence often bordered on arrogance. Robert was tall, sharply dressed, and carried an air of superiority that he seldom tried to mask. He was on his way to a corporate summit in Paris, and the sight of Messi a mere few feet away seemed to pique his interest more than any PowerPoint presentation waiting for him at his destination. Though Robert wasn't a fervent football fan, he was aware of who Messi was, a figure plastered across advertisements, magazines, and headlines. To Robert, athletes were a peculiar breed. He harbored a deep skepticism toward the reverence they received. In his eyes, no one kicking a ball around for a living deserved the adulation Messi commanded. This sentiment brewed within him, fueled further by his love for commanding attention in any room he occupied. The flight had been uneventful for the first 2 hours. Passengers reclined in their seats, some dozing off while others scrolled through their phones. Messi quietly sipped on his coffee, his gaze focused on the clouds outside the window. He was, as always, a picture of humility, the sort that drew people in without effort. A few passengers had cautiously approached him for photos, which he graciously obliged with a soft smile and a nod of his head. Robert, however, found the fuss irritating. He sneered every time someone returned to their seat clutching a selfie with the football star as though they'd won the lottery. "Unbelievable," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for the passenger next to him to hear. "The world has truly lost its mind over celebrities." A stewardess passed by, offering Robert another glass of wine. He accepted it with a curt nod, took a generous sip, and glanced at Messi again. This time, his irritation boiled over. He leaned forward in his seat, calling out loudly enough to disrupt the otherwise peaceful cabin. "Hey Messi, do you even know how many people worship you for nothing?" His voice carried a tone of condescension, laced with a sneering grin that dripped with mockery. The cabin grew quiet. Heads turned, passengers wide-eyed at the audacity of the outburst. Messi turned his head slightly, meeting Robert's gaze with calm, unflinching eyes. He didn't respond, his expression neutral. Robert smirked, emboldened by the attention. "I mean, really," he continued, waving his glass for emphasis. "You kick a ball for a living and they call you a god. It's absurd. People like me, we run businesses, create jobs, build economies. We're the backbone of society. But no, they'd rather worship a guy chasing a ball around." A low murmur rippled through the cabin, passengers exchanging shocked glances. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly disapproving of Robert's behavior. Messi remained silent, his hands resting on his lap, his composure unshaken. The stewardess who had served Robert earlier approached, her expression tense. "Sir, I must ask you to lower your voice and be respectful of other passengers." But Robert waved her off, his arrogance in full bloom. No, I'm just saying what everyone else is probably thinking but is too afraid to say. Let's not act like this is some untouchable deity we're talking about here. He's just another guy who got lucky." At that moment, a passenger seated diagonally from Robert spoke up. "You're out of line, mate," he said, his accent distinctly British. "Messi's not just some guy. He's worked harder than most of us can imagine to get where he is. Show some respect." Robert scoffed, but before he could retort, Messi finally spoke. His voice was soft, measured yet firm. "It's okay," he said, addressing the British man. Then, turning to Robert, he added, "You're entitled to your opinion." The calmness of Messi's response seemed to irritate Robert further. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Oh, did I hurt your feelings? My apologies, superstar. But seriously, how does it feel to have people throw themselves at your feet just because you're good at a children's game?" Messi's gaze remained steady. "It's not about the game," he replied. "It's about the passion, the discipline, and the connection it brings to people. Football isn't just a sport, it's a language. It inspires millions, unites them, and gives hope. That's not luck. That's responsibility. The cabin was silent. Robert opened his mouth, but the weight of Messi's words seemed to momentarily rob him of speech. For the first time, the businessman looked slightly uncomfortable, his bluster wavering. Messi continued, his tone unchanged. And as for luck, I believe it plays a part in everyone's life, including yours. But what you do with that luck, how hard you work, how much you sacrifice, that's what defines you. Several passengers murmured their agreement, nodding in admiration. The stewardess, still standing nearby, offered Messi a grateful smile. Robert, however, wasn't ready to back down entirely. He straightened up, attempting to reclaim his bravado. Fine words, Messi, but at the end of the day, you're just a footballer. I deal with things that actually matter. Messi tilted his head slightly, his expression one of quiet curiosity. What matters to you? He asked. Robert blinked, caught off guard by the question. Success, he replied after a pause. Building something that lasts, making a difference. Messi nodded thoughtfully. Those are admirable goals, but tell me, how do you measure the difference you've made? Robert hesitated, his confidence faltering under Messi's unassuming scrutiny. I create opportunities, he said finally. I provide for my family, contribute to the economy. Messi offered a small smile. Those are important things, but don't dismiss what others contribute just because it's different. Football may seem trivial to you, but it brings joy, hope, and unity to millions. Isn't that also a difference worth making? Robert fell silent, the weight of Messi's words settling heavily on him. The cabin remained hushed, every passenger hanging on the exchange. Finally, Robert exhaled, his shoulders slumping slightly. I suppose I hadn't thought about it that way, he admitted, his tone softer. Messi nodded, his demeanor as gentle as ever. We all have different roles to play. The world needs businessmen as much as it needs artists, athletes, and dreamers. There's room for all of us. The tension in the cabin dissipated, replaced by a sense of quiet awe. Robert sank back into his seat, looking pensive. For the rest of the flight, he remained uncharacteristically subdued, occasionally stealing glances at Messi as though reevaluating everything he'd said. When the plane landed in Paris, passengers began to gather their belongings, exchanging polite farewells with the crew. Robert lingered near his seat, clearly hesitant. As Messi passed by, the businessman cleared his throat. Messi, he said, his voice uncharacteristically tentative. Messi turned, offering a faint smile. I wanted to say I was out of line earlier, and you're right. I was wrong to dismiss what you do. It's clear you've earned everything you have. So for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Messi extended his hand, shaking Robert's firmly. Thank you. It takes strength to admit when you're wrong. Have a good trip. With that, Messi walked on, disappearing into the bustling terminal. Robert stood there for a moment, watching him go, a strange mix of humility and respect washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his arrogance lift, replaced by a newfound understanding. And somewhere high above the clouds, the lesson lingered. Greatness isn't just about success, it's about how you carry it, and the grace you show even in the face of insult. The plane had touched down in Paris, but for Robert, the journey was far from over. As he stood in the bustling terminal, the exchange with Lionel Messi replayed in his mind like a scene from a gripping film. He felt a mixture of embarrassment and awe, emotions he rarely experienced, given his usual position of authority and confidence. Something about Messi's demeanor, the calmness, the wisdom, the humility, had left an indelible mark on him. Robert made his way to his hotel, a grand establishment overlooking the Seine. The city's vibrant energy usually invigorated him, but today he found himself lost in thought as he stared out over the river from his suite. He had always prided himself on his ability to evaluate people quickly, to categorize them into neat little boxes based on their roles and accomplishments. But Messi had shattered that paradigm. The footballer's words echoed in his mind. There's room for all of us. That night, Robert sat at his desk, a glass of whiskey in hand. The Paris skyline glittered outside, but his attention was on the blank notebook in front of him. For the first time in years, he felt compelled to reflect, not just on the interaction with Messi, but on himself. What had driven him to insult a man who had achieved so much? Why had he felt the need to belittle someone whose influence extended far beyond the football pitch? He began to write, pouring his thoughts onto the page. The process was cathartic, forcing him to confront the insecurities and biases he had long buried beneath his confident exterior. He realized that his disdain for celebrities like Messi wasn't rooted in genuine criticism, but in envy. He had always craved the kind of universal admiration Messi received, but his path as a businessman had not provided the same sense of connection to the world. His achievements, while significant, had often felt hollow. Numbers on a spreadsheet, accolades from peers who cared more about profits than people. The next morning, Robert awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He had a full day of meetings ahead, but his mind was already racing with ideas for how he could change his approach, not just in business, but in life. He decided to take a walk before heading to his first appointment, hoping the fresh air and Parisian charm would clear his mind further. As he strolled along the cobblestone streets, Robert noticed a group of children playing football in a small park. Their laughter filled the air as they chased the ball with unbridled enthusiasm. He paused to watch, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. For the first time, he saw the game through a different lens. Not as a trivial pastime, but as a source of pure joy and connection. One boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, executed a surprisingly skillful move, weaving past his friends with agility and precision. The boy's expression was one of sheer delight, and Robert found himself clapping instinctively. The children turned to look at him, their faces lighting up with curiosity. "Nice move!" Robert called out, stepping closer. The boy beamed. "Thanks! I've been practicing. Do you play?" Robert chuckled. "Not anymore. I was never very good, to be honest." "Are you here for the tournament?" another child asked eagerly. Robert frowned. "Tournament?" The boy pointed to a flyer taped to a nearby lamppost. It advertised a local youth football tournament sponsored by a foundation supporting underprivileged children. Intrigued, Robert walked over and read the details. The event was taking place that very afternoon, just a short distance away. He decided to attend, curious to see how football could bring a community together. The tournament venue was a modest stadium, its stands filled with families, friends, and local supporters. The atmosphere was electric, a palpable sense of unity and excitement in the air. Robert found a seat near the midfield line and watched as the young players took to the field. Their passion was infectious, their determination evident in every pass, tackle, and shot. It was clear that for these kids, football was more than a game. It was an opportunity, a dream, a lifeline. As he sat there, Robert's mind wandered back to Messi's words about responsibility and the impact of one's actions. He began to see the parallels between the football star's influence and his own potential as a businessman. He had always focused on profit margins and market shares. But what if he shifted his perspective? What if he used his resources and expertise to create opportunities for others, much like the foundation sponsoring this tournament? When the final whistle blew, Robert stayed behind, watching as the children celebrated their victories and consoled one another over losses. He noticed a man in his mid-40s wearing a shirt emblazoned with the foundation's logo, organizing the cleanup effort. Robert approached him, introducing himself and asking about the organization. The man, whose name was Julian, explained that the foundation aimed to provide children from low-income families with access to sports, education, and mentorship. "Football is just the starting point," Julian said. "It teaches teamwork, discipline, and resilience. But our goal is to help these kids build a better future, both on and off the field." Robert listened intently, his admiration for the initiative growing with each word. He asked Julian how the foundation was funded and learned that while they received some corporate sponsorships, they often struggled to make ends meet. A spark ignited in Robert's mind. For the first time, he saw a way to merge his skills as a businessman with a cause that genuinely inspired him. "I'd like to help," he said, surprising even himself with the sincerity in his voice. Julian raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "In what way?" Robert smiled. "Let's start with a meeting. I have some ideas." Over the next few weeks, Robert immersed himself in the world of the foundation. He attended meetings, visited schools, and even volunteered at training sessions. He learned about the challenges these children faced: poverty, lack of access to education, limited opportunities, and was deeply moved by their resilience and determination. Robert's involvement grew, and he began leveraging his network to secure funding, resources, and partnerships for the foundation. He also used his expertise to streamline their operations, ensuring that every dollar was used effectively. For the first time in years, he felt a genuine sense of fulfillment, knowing that his efforts were making a tangible difference. One afternoon, as Robert reviewed plans for an upcoming fundraiser, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from one of his contacts in Barcelona. The subject line read, "Special guest for the gala?" Curious, he opened the message and was stunned by its contents. The contact, who had heard about Robert's involvement with the foundation, had reached out to Lionel Messi's team. To Robert's astonishment, Messi had agreed to attend the fundraiser as a guest speaker. The news left Robert speechless. He hadn't seen or spoken to Messi since their encounter on the plane, and he wondered what the football star would think of his transformation. Would he even remember him? The night of the gala arrived, and the venue was abuzz with excitement. Dressed in a sleek black tuxedo, Robert greeted guests, spoke about the foundation's mission, and mingled with donors. When Messi arrived, the room seemed to hold its breath. The footballer's presence was magnetic, his humble demeanor once again drawing people to him like moths to a flame. As the evening progressed, Messi took the stage to deliver a heartfelt speech about the power of sports to change lives. He spoke about his own journey, the challenges he had faced, and the importance of giving back. His words resonated deeply with everyone in the room, and when he finished, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, Robert approached Messi, feeling a mixture of nerves and gratitude. "Mr. Messi," he began, extending his hand. Messi turned, his expression warm. "Robert," he said, a hint of recognition in his voice. "It's good to see you again." Robert was taken aback. "You remember me?" Messi nodded. "Of course, how could I forget?" Robert smiled, his nerves easing. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "Our conversation on the plane, it changed me. It made me realize how narrow my perspective was, and it inspired me to do better. This foundation, everything we're doing here, it's because of you." Messi's gaze softened, and he placed a hand on Robert's shoulder. "That's all you," he said. "I just reminded you of something you already had inside." The two men talked for a while longer, sharing ideas and experiences. By the end of the evening, Robert felt a sense of closure, as well as a renewed commitment to the path he had chosen. In the years that followed, Robert continued to work with the foundation, expanding its reach and impact. He became a vocal advocate for social responsibility in business, inspiring others to use their success to uplift those in need. And while his encounter with Messi had been brief, it remained a turning point in his life, a moment of humility, reflection, and ultimately, transformation. As for Messi, he continued to inspire millions with his talent, grace, and generosity both on and off the pitch. And though he might not have thought much about that first-class flight to Paris, for Robert, it was the journey that changed everything. Robert's transformation did not stop at his involvement with the Youth Football Foundation. The encounter with Lionel Messi had not only reshaped his perspective, but also rekindled a dormant sense of purpose that extended beyond his work. It was as though a new world had opened before him, a world where success wasn't measured solely in wealth or accolades, but in the depth of one's impact on others. As weeks turned into months, Robert delved deeper into initiatives that aligned with his newfound outlook. He began researching global issues such as education inequality, access to clean water, and community development. The Football Foundation had been his starting point, but now he sought to expand his influence into broader areas. For Robert, this wasn't about building his reputation. It was about creating something meaningful, something lasting. One evening, as he reviewed a report on the Foundation's latest achievements, an idea struck him. What if he could combine his business expertise with his growing passion for philanthropy? He envisioned a platform where businesses could collaborate with grassroots organizations to drive meaningful change. It wouldn't just be about donating money. It would be about building sustainable solutions that empowered communities. The idea grew rapidly in his mind, and within weeks, Robert had assembled a small team of like-minded individuals. They began sketching out the framework for what would become Elevate Impact, a global initiative aimed at bridging the gap between corporate resources and local needs. Elevate Impact would serve as a hub for businesses to partner with NGOs, offering not just funding but also logistical support, mentorship, and access to technology. Launching Elevate Impact was no small task. Robert poured countless hours into developing its mission, building relationships with key stakeholders, and securing initial funding. His reputation as a shrewd businessman opened doors, but his personal growth and genuine passion for the cause made people listen. Those who once viewed him as aloof or self-serving were struck by his transformation. He was no longer the man who dismissed the importance of anything outside his sphere of influence. He had become a bridge builder, a connector, and a champion for causes larger than himself. As Elevate Impact gained traction, Robert found himself traveling to parts of the world he had never considered visiting before. In Kenya, he worked with a community struggling to access clean water. He sat in the homes of families who shared their stories with him, their resilience shining through even in the face of hardship. In Colombia, he partnered with local educators to establish schools in remote areas, ensuring that children who once had no access to education could dream of brighter futures. And in India, he collaborated with tech companies to bring digital literacy programs to underprivileged communities. Through these experiences, Robert discovered something unexpected. He was learning as much as he was giving. Each community he visited taught him lessons in perseverance, humility, and the power of collective action. He began to see humanity in a way he never had before, not as a competition for resources or recognition, but as a tapestry of interconnected lives, each thread essential to the whole. One of the most transformative moments for Robert came during a visit to a refugee camp in Jordan. The camp housed thousands of displaced individuals, many of whom had fled war and persecution. Among them was a young girl named Amina, who had been separated from her parents during their journey to safety. Despite her circumstances, Amina radiated a quiet strength that left Robert in awe. She had taught herself English by reading discarded newspapers and dreamed of one day becoming a doctor. Robert spent hours talking with Amina, listening to her story and her aspirations. Her resilience reminded him of the children he had watched play football in Paris and the lesson Messi had imparted about the power of hope and responsibility. When he returned to his hotel that evening, Robert couldn't shake the image of Amina's determined face. He vowed to find a way to help her and others like her achieve their dreams. Elevate Impact launched a new program specifically for refugee education, partnering with international organizations to provide scholarships, mentorship, and vocational training. Amina became one of the first beneficiaries, and Robert stayed in touch with her as she began her journey toward becoming a doctor. Watching her progress became a deeply personal source of pride and motivation for him. As Elevate Impact flourished, Robert's personal life also underwent a transformation. He reconnected with friends and family members he had distanced himself from during his years of single-minded ambition. His newfound humility and warmth surprised those who had known him as the brash, overly confident businessman. Robert began to value relationships in a way he never had before, realizing that the connections he built with others were as integral to his success as his professional achievements. One day, while attending a conference on corporate social responsibility, Robert was invited to speak about his journey. Standing on the stage in front of a packed auditorium, he shared the story of his encounter with Lionel Messi, the subsequent introspection it had sparked, and the path it had led him down. He spoke candidly about his former arrogance and how his perspective had shifted when he began to see success as a tool for uplifting others rather than a personal accolade. The audience was captivated, and when Robert finished, the room erupted into applause. Among the attendees was a young entrepreneur who approached him afterward. "Your story resonates with me," she said. "I've always admired people like Messi, but I've struggled to figure out how I can make an impact in my own field. Listening to you made me realize that I don't have to be a superstar to make a difference. I just need to start where I am." Her words struck a chord with Robert, reminding him of the ripple effect that even small actions could have. It was a moment of clarity. His journey wasn't just about creating change, it was about inspiring others to do the same. He began to see himself not just as a leader, but as a mentor, someone who could guide others toward discovering their own capacity for impact. Years passed, and Elevate Impact became a global force for good. The organization had partnered with hundreds of businesses and NGOs, touching countless lives around the world. Yet Robert remained grounded, never forgetting the lesson that had set him on this path. One day, as he prepared to attend an awards ceremony recognizing Elevate Impact's achievements, Robert received a letter in the mail. It was from Amina, now a second-year medical student. Her handwriting was neat, her words filled with gratitude. "Dear Mr. Robert, I wanted to thank you for believing in me when so many others didn't. Because of you, I am closer to achieving my dream of becoming a doctor. But more than that, You taught me the importance of using our gifts to help others. One day I hope to do for someone else what you've done for me. With heartfelt gratitude, Amina." The letter brought tears to Robert's eyes. It was a tangible reminder of why he had chosen this path, a path that had begun with a simple yet profound lesson from Lionel Messi. As Robert stepped onto the stage that evening to accept the award, he thought of Messi's words once again, "There's room for all of us." And as he looked out at the audience, filled with individuals from every walk of life, he realized just how true those words were. Each person had the capacity to make a difference, and together, they could weave a tapestry of hope, resilience, and unity. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for him. It was for everyone who had chosen to believe in a better world. And for Robert, it was a moment of quiet satisfaction, not because of the recognition, but because he knew deep in his heart that he had finally found his purpose. As Robert descended the stage after receiving the award, his heart was full, but his mind was already moving forward. For him, recognition was not the destination. It was a marker of progress. The world's needs were vast, and his work was just beginning. That evening, as he mingled with other honorees and guests, Robert felt a profound sense of camaraderie. These were people who, like him, had chosen to wield their influence for the betterment of others. The conversation sparked new ideas, and by the end of the night, Robert had scribbled down notes on several potential collaborations. In the days following the ceremony, Robert returned to his work with renewed vigor. One of the projects he felt particularly passionate about was integrating digital tools into grassroots initiatives. He had witnessed firsthand how technology could bridge gaps, providing access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities in even the most remote communities. However, he understood that technology alone wasn't enough. It had to be paired with cultural sensitivity and a deep understanding of the local context. To address this, Robert partnered with a team of anthropologists, educators, and tech developers to create customizable solutions tailored to specific communities. One pilot program, launched in rural Uganda, combined solar-powered tablets with localized educational content. The program also included training for teachers, ensuring that the technology enhanced rather than replaced traditional methods of learning. Within months, the project showed remarkable results. Literacy rates began to climb, and children who had previously been disengaged were thriving. Meanwhile, Robert found himself increasingly drawn to storytelling as a tool for change. He realized that data and metrics, while important, often failed to capture the human element of his work. Inspired by the heartfelt stories he had encountered, Robert decided to launch a media initiative within Elevate Impact. The goal was to share the voices of those whose lives had been transformed, amplifying their stories to inspire others. The film produced by the initiative was a documentary following Amina's journey. It chronicled her struggles, her dreams, and the profound impact of the scholarship program that had enabled her to pursue medical school. The documentary premiered at a film festival, where it received a standing ovation. More importantly, it ignited a wave of donations and support for the refugee education program. Robert's commitment to staying connected to the people he served remained unwavering. He frequently visited communities, not as a distant benefactor, but as an active participant. During one such visit to a women's cooperative in Southeast Asia, he spent hours learning about their work in sustainable agriculture. These women were not only feeding their families, but also creating eco-friendly solutions that benefited their entire region. Robert returned from the trip inspired to incorporate environmental sustainability into Elevate Impact's core mission. Through all this, Robert often reflected on how far he had come, not just professionally, but personally. His life, once consumed by the relentless pursuit of status, was now defined by purpose and connection. Each step of his journey reminded him of the profound truth that Lionel Messi had revealed to him: the power of humility and the boundless potential of using one's success to lift others. It was a legacy worth building, one life at a time. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on someone insulting Messi on a first-class flight? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.